Once upon a time, in a serene farming community in Jamaica nestled between rolling hills and lush greenery, the sun painted a golden hue across the fields. A small farmhouse stood proud, home to a spirited young girl named Charlene. Charlene, a lively and strong-willed girl, was the heart and soul of her family. The farmhouse exuded warmth and coziness, with the scent of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. Charlene, an only child, was the pride and joy of her parents, Earl and Bernice. Earl, a hard-working farmer, and Bernice, a nurturing homemaker, adored their daughter with all their hearts. Their love for her was as vast and boundless as the fields that surrounded their abode. The family's days were filled with laughter, hard work, and the simple pleasures of rural life. Charlene, though often headstrong and rebellious, was a beam of sunshine that brightened their world. Charlene, however, seemed unfazed by the chores that awaited her. She glanced nonchalantly at the clock, her friends waiting eagerly outside. The allure of socializing outweighed the responsibility that tugged at her from all corners. Her parents exchanged worried glances as they observed their daughter's lack of initiative. "Charlene, dear, it's time to help with the morning chores," Bernice gently reminded, placing a tray of warm biscuits on the table. Charlene let out an exaggerated sigh, rolling her eyes. "Can't I just skip them for today? My friends are waiting, and I don't want to keep them waiting." Earl chimed in, his voice carrying a tinge of concern. "Sweetheart, responsibilities are part of growing up. You can't keep neglecting your duties." But Charlene shrugged off their pleas, convinced that being an only child meant she deserved to be pampered. The weight of the chores seemed inconsequential compared to her desire for a carefree morning with friends. The clash of perspectives left the family in a delicate balance, one that would test the boundaries of love and expectations within their humble home. Years went by, and Charlene grew more pompous and proud. All of her parents' teachings fell on deaf ears. One day while hanging out with her friends, she saw a stranger approaching them, asking for directions as he had missed his way. She directed him, and they got to chatting and kept in touch. Charlene started sneaking out of the house while her parents were sleeping to hang out with her newfound friend, Garfield. Soon, they both developed feelings for each other. One day, Garfield came to visit her at her home, and her parents answered the door instead of her and chased Garfield away. They spoke to Charlene about befriending someone she knew nothing about, but she ignored their warnings. Soon after, Charlene was pregnant, and Garfield told her he was not ready to be a father. He returned back to where he came from without telling Charlene. Since she didn't have his address, she had no way of locating him. Months later, Charlene gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. She was saddened by Garfield abandoning her, and she didn't want anything to do with her newborn daughter. Her parents named the new baby Nora. Weeks later, Charlene left home without telling her parents, leaving behind a letter explaining she went off to look for greener pastures, and that they should take Nora as their own daughter. Charlene found herself in the bustling heart of the city, staying at her friend's apartment. A friend she had met just before her life took an unexpected turn with Nora's pregnancy. The promise of being introduced to her friend's older brother, who was returning from abroad and in search of a life partner, lingered in the air. The prospect of a fresh start, free from her past decisions, enticed her. Meanwhile in the country, years passed, and Nora grew up to be a respectful, obedient young woman who was the apple of her grandparents' eyes. Nora knew all about her mother Charlene, as her grandparents told her when she was old enough. She had the love of her grandparents, and that was enough for her. As the years passed, Nora's grandfather got sick, and they had spent all their savings on his treatments, but he kept growing weaker each day. Nora decided she would go to the city to find a job to help with her grandfather's medical expenses. Though her grandmother was not in agreement for Nora to leave, Nora convinced her and she had no choice but to let her go. Nora heard from a neighbor about a woman in the city that needed a maid, and she agreed to take the job. As she bid her grandparents goodbye, she promised to send them money for food and medical expenses each time she got her salary. After Nora got to the city and met with her new employers, it was a married couple. The wife was very harsh and rude, but the husband was a very nice man. Nora would do all her chores diligently and was always happy, singing when she cleaned. Her boss, who gave her name as Claire, was always harsh with Nora whenever she saw her happy. She would scream and give her more house chores to do. She would even mess the house up intentionally just to give Nora extra work. She treated Nora very badly and often would use abusive words on her. Throughout this abuse and humiliation, Nora remained respectful and cheerful, knowing that her elderly grandparents were depending on her salary for their upkeep. Claire would wake Nora from her sleep early in the morning to start her chores. She would deny Nora food for days. Even after Nora had made delicious meals, she would tell her to use money from her salary to make her own meals, which Nora did, but still, Claire would deny her using her pots to cook her meal. Still, Nora didn't hold any grudges but continued to do her job to the best of her ability. One day while cooking, Nora heard Claire and her husband Adam arguing over their childlessness. They had been married for 20 years, but she was unable to bear her husband a child, though they both had no medical condition preventing them from conceiving. Nora felt so bad for the couple but continued cooking. Upon finishing up her cooking and serving dinner, upon tasting the food, Claire poured it on the floor, breaking the plate, and ordered Nora to clean it up and told her the food was salty. She ordered her to go back and prepare another meal for her. Nora cried and proceeded to clean up the broken glasses. Adam, who was Claire's husband, intervened and asked Claire to leave Nora alone, that there was nothing wrong with the food. But that made Claire more angry. She waited until Adam went to work and fired Nora for no just reason. She threw Nora out of the house without pay and threatened to harm her if she dared to return. When Adam returned home, Claire told him Nora's family had asked her to return home. Adam had no choice but to take his wife Claire's word for it. Meanwhile, Nora was stranded in the city with nowhere to go. While wandering around on the street, Nora saw a purse on the street and picked it up. She opened it up and saw some cash and jewelry inside. She quickly looked around to see if anyone was looking for the missing purse when she saw a woman asking if anyone had seen a purse. Nora approached the woman and told her she found the purse and handed it to her. The woman asked Nora if she had opened the purse to see what was inside. She nodded and told her yes. The lady was astonished because only a kind person could return the purse after seeing what was inside. The lady thanked her and asked her if she could do anything to help her in return. Nora told her if there was any housekeeper or maid job she knew of that she could do. The lady told her no, but that she would give her some cash to return home. Nora agreed. When she was walking away, the lady saw how sad Nora was and offered her a job at her own house. Though she didn't need a maid, she just wanted to help Nora. She introduced herself as Violet, and they returned home. Nora was amazed at how beautiful Violet's home was. It was a peaceful work experience, and Nora got a bigger salary than she previously had at Claire's and Adam's. Nora was able to send enough money back home to care for her aging grandparents. Violet would often accompany Nora home on her off days to see her grandparents. Violet asked Nora's grandparents on one of her visits why Nora wasn't in school and working as a maid, what happened to her parents. The grandparents narrated the whole story and how Nora's mother Charlene abandoned her at birth. Violet offered to further Nora's education and pay her the same salary. Nora couldn't contain her joy. Years passed, and Nora was now a graduate. Her adopted mother Violet had helped her achieve her lifelong goals of being an entrepreneur. Nora built 2 hotels with the help of Violet and a loan she got from the bank. Her business flourished, and she moved her elderly grandparents to live with her in the city so she could take good care of them. Meanwhile, across town, Claire's marriage had fallen apart. Adam kicked her out of the house. After years of laziness, entitlement, and her refusal to work or contribute financially to the household. Despite her lack of financial contribution, Claire spent lavishly on clothes and jewelry. Throughout their marriage, she never bore Adam a child. Adam grew weary of Claire's pompous ways and how she looked down on people. Every maid they hired, Claire mistreated, eventually driving them away. Frustrated by her childlessness and attitude, Adam decided to end the marriage and eventually married a new wife. Claire was now stranded and bounced around from one place to the next. With no money and her refusal to go back home to her parents' tiny house in her small community, she decided to face her faith in the city. One day while roaming the streets, she saw a work notice, looking for a carer for an old couple. It eventually led her to Nora's house. When she got there and saw Nora, she was shocked and lost for words. Nora had been looking for someone to care for her elderly grandparents while she was at work. When Nora's grandparents heard the voices, they came out of their room and asked what was happening. Nora told them the lady that abused and mistreated her while she was working as a maid, then eventually threw her out on the street, was now the one at her home seeking the job to care for them while she's at work. When the elderly couple saw Claire, they immediately gasped. "Claire! Mom, Dad, what are you guys doing here?" Nora asked what was going on. Claire broke down in tears. Nora's grandparents told Nora that the Claire she knows is her mother Charlene, who abandoned her for greener pastures when she was just 2 weeks old. This is the first time they're seeing her in 30 years. Charlene, realizing that Nora was her daughter, wept. Nora started crying and asked her to leave her house. Her grandparents pleaded on her daughter Charlene's behalf for Nora to forgive her. Nora was adamant that she should leave her house when Charlene dropped to her knees and begged her for forgiveness, as she was sorry for abandoning her and making life hell for her when she worked for her as a maid. After Charlene's departure, Nora's grandparents desperately vouched for her, revealing her difficult circumstances of being ejected from her ex-husband's home and left with nothing. Despite all the pain, they emphasized that Charlene was still Nora's mother. Nora's heart softened, but forgiveness was a distant prospect given the abandonment and mistreatment she endured as a maid under her mother's roof. The nights without food and the constant humiliation were scars that ran deep. Nora found solace in the love of her caring grandparents and her adoptive mother, Violet. She struggled to believe in her mother's potential for change, considering she had forsaken her elderly parents for 30 long years. The truth remained clear: if Charlene hadn't lost her wealth, she wouldn't have taken any interest in reconnecting with her family. The wounds were far from healed, and trust would need time to mend. In the midst of the bustling street, Charlene wept, drowning in shame for her past actions and the cruelty she had shown Nora, her own daughter who served as a maid under her roof without her knowing. The weight of her actions and their consequences bore down on her, and she found herself in a position where she needed Nora's help. Charlene grappled with the regret of allowing Garfield's abandonment during her pregnancy to blind her to the precious gift Nora truly was. The love and guidance her parents, who had always cared deeply for her, had provided were overshadowed by her insatiable desire for more without putting in the necessary effort. Her greed and arrogance had come full circle, haunting her in the moment of realization. Determined to mend her broken family, Charlene made a heartfelt decision to change her ways and earn the forgiveness of both Nora and her parents. She committed herself to kindness, shedding her former arrogance and embracing humility. Days turned into weeks as she consistently reached out to her parents, showcasing her transformation. While her parents were open to her efforts, Nora remained skeptical. With unwavering resolve, Charlene continued her journey toward redemption. Over time, her genuine efforts became evident to Nora, gradually thawing her heart. Nora witnessed her mother's genuine transformation and found it in her own heart to forgive. The process of rebuilding their mother-daughter relationship began, fueled by their joint determination to bridge the gaps of the past. Nora's grandparents, witnessing this miraculous change, rejoiced at the return of their prodigal daughter, and Nora found the opportunity to cultivate a bond with her mother once again. In the end, they found solace and healing in each other's embrace. Charlene, Nora, and their family worked through the pain and hardships, forging a new bond based on love, forgiveness, and understanding. With time, they learn to appreciate the beauty of family, cherishing each moment spent together. United and stronger, they embrace the chance to live happily ever after, finding joy in the love that had mended their once fractured lives. The tale imparts a lesson on the strength of forgiveness, revealing that those cast aside could become our salvation in the future. Laziness, defiance, and a deceitful life have a tendency to revisit, causing repercussions. Treating those in need with respect and empathy is vital, for we may find ourselves in their position one day. Kindness is a simple gesture with a profound impact. Did you enjoy this story? If you did, please show your appreciation by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing, and sharing it with a friend to support the growth of our channel. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you in our next story time.